Okay. So our first question is, can you tell me about what did you see in the autism community when you first started?
Well, actually, I'll start with Dr. Lovas. He was at UCLA, but I knew that he was a big name in autism treatment.
He was your professor?
Yeah, I had a class with him. Everybody in the class, we got to go work with kids, with autistic kids. And then once we looked like we knew what we were doing, he would put us on cases with one of his senior therapists, and that's sort of how we learned everything. He's Norwegian, and he had a Norwegian accent. His first thing he would do, he would come into the room with the parents, and he said, "So how's everything going? Good?" I was trying to get a positive feeling about it. Yeah, he's very, he spoke loudly, and I started at UCLA, then I went to University of Oregon for grad school, and came out here for internship. That's how I ended up out here.
So then you started working at the Mendota Mental Health Institute.
Yeah.
Right. And so I met you there at the Mendota Mental Health Institute. The first day, January, that I came in, like January 2, there was a bulletin board that said, Dr. Ivar Lovas will lecture at Goodwin Hall here at the Mendota Mental Health Institute, invited by Dr. Glenn Sallows. And so forth. I went and found your office, and you were in there in the office, and you had your feet up on the desk, and you were leaning back, and you were on the phone. And around the room were identical stacks of paper about this thick. Identical stacks crisscrossing all over your office. And you had notes taped up on the wall. And I said who I was and that I had heard Dr. Lovas was going to be speaking there and that you had invited him. And you said, yes, I have. And you handed me one of the stacks and said, this is the reading for it. And I said, thank you. And I took it home and read it all and was incredulous because here I was at the end of my doctorate, finished with coursework. And I hadn't heard a thing about autism. And here they're saying, they could treat autism also. That stack of paper was the sum total of all research that existed in the world at that time. And I couldn't believe that I had finished my degree and nobody had said a word about it in my education.
He, more than anyone else, has shown that the nervous system can grow and that limitations, even if they're documented on PET scans, need not be permanent limitations. So with that brief introduction, let me turn over the morning to Professor Lovas and thank him for joining us today.
I want to thank Dr. Greenspan for inviting me to the conference and to the members of the
in 1994 because of the talk at the Mendota Mental Health Institute. Many, many people heard about that. Lovas therapy is what they called it.
Is the application of learning theory something new here, Dr. Lovas?
No, research on the principles of learning.
Lovas said that he had a plan with you already for you to take a summer break after June 9 to go out there. And what he was doing was he was training these doctors who were in the community to replicate the study that he had done and published in 1997, showing that children that he had begun treating in their second year of life, that 50% of those children had acquired average functioning and had gone on to school, and he had ended treatment before they went on to school. And he was wanting to replicate the research that he had done with them when they were 2, to show that this wasn't just a phenomenon of his work with children. And it was called the Multi-Site Replication Project. And the name of his study was the UCLA Young Autism Project. And so he had selected Glenn and me to run the Wisconsin Young Autism Project. And in the research, once the 12 children had been selected by UCLA, then everybody else who was coming, even if the children fit within the research parameters, the research was full, and we wanted to be able to give help to all children in the state of Wisconsin. And so we developed the Wisconsin Early Autism Project in tandem that did the same thing, but everybody was clinic directed.
In 1995, I was a student at the University of Wisconsin. I was an aspiring special education teacher and spending my free time supporting children in a preschool that supported families with children who were at risk, who had special educational or medical needs. And Dr. Salles and Grapner at that time had received training in and access to this new intervention to support families of children with autism. They returned to the Madison area and identified one of my students as a potential recipient of their treatment. And I had the opportunity to work with them directly in delivering this treatment for the first time in the state of Wisconsin. And it was at that point that my career with WEAP started, and it hasn't stopped since.
Do you like it, Erin?
Yeah.
I had every intention to move to South America and to join the Peace Corps. And I distinctly remember getting a phone call from Dr. Grapner in my studio apartment saying, "We think you've got something. Would you like to continue to work for us?" And I said, yes, I will put that ticket to South America away, and I'm going to give this a go. And I have zero regrets. I remember early on, as I transitioned from the role of a technician into a supervisory role, we're very excited about this black bag, right? All of the supervisors had a very important black bag, and in that black bag was a very important black binder. And that black binder held the secret to the work that we do. And I'll never forget how proud I was the day I got my binder, I got my bag, and I got a pager. And again, time before cell phones, a time before laptops were every day, I got my pager, and I'll never forget the first time I got an important page from the clinic. And I had to tootle over to my client's house phone and say, "Could I please use your phone? The office needs me." And I called in, and Dr. Salles was on the end of the line and said, "We have a family that needs help, and we think you're the person to help them." And that was a very, very proud and exciting moment for me, and a time that helped me feel confident that this was the choice I wanted to make for my career path. WEAP's work was really pioneering and aspirational, and at that time it was unique. And so there were families around the country and to some extent around the world seeking out the work that Dr. Salles and Grapner were doing and asking for support for their children, for their families, for their community, and for their schools. There was a great need across
the world, for services. ABA was becoming very popular, but it very much sprang from the United States. So again, very visionary. It was like there were children there. Families were contacting America. Dr. Sallows, Dr. Graupner, well, we can go. Let's go. There was never a barrier. There was always an opportunity.
And so myself and a number of colleagues, on behalf of WEAP, went to London and started the London Early Autism Project.
And then from LEAP, they leapt to, I think it was in Australia. And then from Malaysia, because I imagine what happened is there was a clinic in Australia, Malaysia people started to contact the Australian, and then also we had the clinic in Vancouver open up. And then I would say those clinics were all up and running by sort of like 2000, 2002, 2003. And then they took flight themselves.
Supporting families in countries that were not English-speaking was certainly challenging, but equally exciting. And as practitioners, we spend a significant amount of our time supporting communication development in our young children, supporting nonverbal communication, and we were able to apply a lot of those skills to our interactions with the teams we were working with and the families we worked with. But we did benefit from the support of interpreters and translators as well, who were able to kind of share that work.
Some of the changes we've seen in the field have definitely evolved, like society has evolved technologically. There were no smartphones. There was really just pen and paper. I remember when we made stimuli, we would get big catalogs. And it was like if we were doing categories, we would be cutting out, oh, we've got all the clothes or we've got all the toys. One thing I do remember is, when we needed to there's a program called block imitation, or we're replicating something, we would actually have to take pictures of what we were replicating. And we'd go down, in Britain you call it chemist, but you call it pharmacy here. I don't know whether that's where they developed pictures. And you would be like, you could do either 2 days or 3 days. And you'd be like, I want 24-hour or 1-hour development. And off they would come. And they would be printing off all these pictures. And there'd be like 24 just of block structures. And then you'd be so excited and you'd rush back and you've got your block imitation pictures. And there was definitely a real buzz. It was the first generation of the field. And we were on a mission. There was an urgency. There was an urgency about things. So you wanted those materials ready the next day. You wanted to get onto that next skill, the next hour. You would do anything to get to that point. You felt like you were this sort of like band of just this big team going out there to save the world, basically. And it felt really good.
After working in Vancouver, myself and a colleague had the opportunity to move to Ireland and to continue the work that LEAP had started in the United Kingdom and work throughout Ireland and to provide additional support in other parts of Europe and Africa as well. But we had returned to the United States for a continuing education opportunity at a conference, and we saw Dr. Sallows, whom we hadn't seen for a few years, on an elevator, and he said, "How are you doing?" And we said, "We're great." And he said, "How would you like to come home?" And so we did. I think one of the most exciting things about the aspirational work that the Wisconsin Project has done is it's instilled this sort of enthusiasm for the work that we do. Even here in this state, a majority of the providers in this state have staff who were trained in the early work that the Wisconsin Early Autism Project did. And that is equally the case in other parts of the world. So whilst the London Early Autism Project no longer exists, clinicians who were trained there exist and are providing this service either through a statutory service delivery model within the schools or through other private practices. And we can see that in every kind of corner we look at. We see somebody whose life has been impacted by or touched by the work that Dr. Sallows and Graupner started here in Wisconsin. I remember both Dr. Sallows and Graupner driving to and from families' homes and coming into the therapy sessions, coming into team meetings, joining the conversations. And Dr. Sallows always took his shoes off. and we always had a little bit of a snack at the end of the meetings. And we often went to the trunk of Tammy's car to get the tools, the materials, the paperwork we needed in order to deliver this service. And when I think back to the trunk of a car being the foundation and now seeing the nearly 20 learning centers we have available in the state, I'm just continually impressed with, as I said, the aspirational nature of this organization and the impact it's had on our community.
When you want to say the most, you sometimes can only say the least. And thank you doesn't seem enough, but Dr. Sallows and Dr. Graupner, you have given this state, this world, the families and children, and including myself, everything I could have never dreamed of. And just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I've always said to them, my role is to maintain their legacy, and I hope I'm doing that. And I always sign myself, your Brit.